A few years back, one of the most awesome things ever happened. This whale washed up on an Oregon State beach. That's not the most awesome thing. That's a terrible thing, terrible tragedy. What's awesome is what happened after that. The Department of Transportation was called in to remove the whale, apparently because they must have experience in removing large objects. I'm not exactly sure. But they had their engineers get together and they came up with this brilliant idea. They were going to blow the whale up and blow it into small pieces so that the seagulls would come and eat the whale, and in that way they would not only dispose of the whale, but then the seagulls would all get, like a free lunch and be like fat and happy. And they thought this was like the most brilliant idea ever. And so they moved everybody back and cordoned everybody off, and they had like a little viewing area, and they then placed 2 tons of dynamite around the whale. And what happened next is like the most awesome thing ever. And there was a news crew that was there that captured the whole thing. Like, you can go on YouTube and watch this, and it's amazing. And so what happens is that at first the whale just disappears in a blast of smoke and flame. And you can hear the crowd because the news crew is with the crowd. And the crowd is just cheering wildly because they thought this was like super awesome. But they hadn't seen anything yet. Because in the background, all of a sudden you hear in the news footage this huge splat. And then a woman very clearly says, "Oh, look, here comes the, oh no." The news reporter commenting after this says, and I quote, "The humor of the entire situation suddenly gave way to a run for survival as large chunks of whale blubber fell everywhere. One piece caved in the roof of a car over a half-mile away, and there were several pieces of whale the size of condominium units left on the beach." Sometimes we try to do the right thing in all sincerity, and we make a mess of things. Southern Baptists did this back in 1998. In a genuine effort to strengthen families, I think a very sincere effort to strengthen families, they made a resolution at their national convention. We've been making news at our convention. We just had a convention this week. And in this one, in part of their resolution to strengthen families, they included the line, "And wives should submit to their husbands." And the stories in the mainstream press fell like whale blubber on an Oregon State beach. Southern Baptists were called the He-Man Woman Haters Club. We want to oppress women. We want to suppress women. We want to keep women barefoot and pregnant. We've set the women's movement back 100 years. And the text that Southern Baptists used to justify this statement is in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 21 to 33. And I contend it's one of the most misunderstood and certainly misapplied passages in all of Scripture. And it reads like this: "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated his own body, but he feeds and cares for it, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Now, I want to be real careful with this because, again, I think it's very easy to misunderstand or misapply. First of all, the text does say that wives should submit to their husbands, and Southern Baptists were not wrong on that. But the text actually teaches mutual submission. It says, submit to one another. And this is very consistent with the values and the ethics of Christ. What we learn pretty much every week is that the Christian life is about humility and service and love and righteousness and preferring one another, and this is how we're to behave towards everyone, and certainly that should start in our own home. We talked also last week about how the Trinity exists in perfect unity and harmony and oneness with one another, and right here Paul is talking about how marriage reflects our relationship with God, and it reflects the relationship that God has within himself. And that's what we talked about 2 weeks prior when we talked about marriage. We were talking about unity, harmony, and oneness in the Trinity, and how that should also exist in our marriages. And so there is a mutual submission and service to one another because this is the Christian ethic, and this is how we are to treat everyone, and certainly this is the ethic that should exist in our homes. Now, in light of this ethic of mutual submission and mutual service, I think it is important for us to understand, I believe, because of how men and women are wired, that our service to one another does tend to take some different directions, regarding the various genders. And we cannot lighten this with theological gymnastics. And so it does say, yes, that the wife should submit to the husband because the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. And, pretty much everyone agrees that this means that the husband is to take a spiritual leadership role in the home. That he is to lead out spiritually in the home and direct the family spiritually. And I'm not sure exactly why God designed things to be this way. Maybe it's because, Eve was taken from Adam's rib, or just how God wired men and women generally different from one another, or what have you. But this is the design. Also, men are to submit to their wives because the husband is to love his wife as Christ loved the church. And when you put verses 21 and 25 together, this is very, very clear. And a lot of husbands really enjoy overlooking that point. But the text teaches that the husband's responsibility to serve the wife is at least as great as the wife's responsibility to serve the husband. In fact, I personally believe that the husband's responsibility is greater, or at least by the weight of the text, because the wife has 3 verses on her responsibility and the husband has 9 verses on his responsibility. And so what we see are the ethic of Christianity, the values of Christ: humility, service, love, sacrifice, preferring one another, applied to the home. That we are to follow the model of Christ, and the text talks about this, who emptied himself and made himself a servant. We are to emulate that attitude in our home. And so marriage is not about my needs and my desires and my rights. It's about humbly serving one another in love. And any attempt to twist that as the meaning abuses this text and makes it say something that it's not necessarily intending to say. Furthermore, I believe this text has incredible practical wisdom and application in our homes and in our relationships, or at least the relationship between husbands and wives. And I believe that verse 33 sums it up beautifully and gives us this wisdom. Each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. You can go to the next slide if you want, because then we'll just keep that up there. But kind of that first verse and the last verse kind of bring the whole the whole thing together. And I believe this text is important because it not only sums up what it is that Paul is trying to say, but again, it gives us incredible insight into our families. Because contemporary psychologists and family therapists have stumbled upon something in the last couple of decades, independent of this text, independent really of faith, but we have discovered generally what husbands and wives tend to desire in the marriage relationship. Like what is it that we need from the other person to have a fulfilling and satisfying relationship? Like what is it that really makes marriage work? And what they have discovered, and I think they thought they were discovering really something new, is that wives generally desired to feel loved and cherished by their husbands, and husbands desired to feel respected by their wives. And don't tell them, but this has been in the Bible for like 2,000 years. And so let's talk about this. Let's break this down a little bit. And maybe let's start with the wives. And so women desire to know that their husbands love them. This is the way they are wired. This is what a wife needs from her husband. So men, your wife wants to feel special. She wants to feel that she is the most important person in the world to you. She wants to feel desired. She wants to feel that she can depend on you. She wants to feel that you care about her and her needs. She wants to feel that you want to spend time with her and you want to connect with her on an emotional level. That she wants you to want to please her. She wants to feel that she is important, and she wants you to make a genuine effort to communicate that you do indeed feel this way. And so this is why women will say things like, why don't you ever bring me flowers anymore? And flowers are not the issue. If the woman wanted flowers, she could go to the store and buy flowers. The flowers are not the big deal. She wants you to care enough to communicate that you care. This is why women will often wait till the most inopportune time that they possibly can to interrupt you and ask for something like, hey, will you take out the garbage? Like, you're the only, I'm just going to tell you right now, in my house, I'm the only one capable of taking out the garbage. Like, no one can do it. Like, I don't know. Like, I've seen Cindy lift other objects the same weight. I've seen her carry them. I don't know, but I think she is incapable of taking out the garbage. That's just a segue. So, not a segue, but just a sidebar. I told Cindy I wasn't going to talk about her in this message, but then I did. So, anyway, she's completely incapable of doing that. And she usually waits till, I'm right in the middle of something, my mind is on something else, and honey, can you take out the garbage? Now, here's the thing. And I'll say something like, well, hey, I'm right in the middle of the game. She's like, I know, but I really need you to do this for me. And I'm like, but the Falcons are playing. I know, but I really need you to do this for me. And I'll say, okay, I'll get to it. And then she'll have to ask me again. By the time she gets me to take out the garbage, she could have taken out the garbage 20 times. But it's not about the garbage. She wants to know that she is more important to me than the football game. And so men who do these things, they do the little things to express that they care. Little things that say that, honey, you're important to me. Your needs are important to me. Men who do those things, make their wives feel loved. And with that comes a sense of value, significance, happiness, joy, and security. And when a wife feels this way, or maybe more specifically, feels this way because of her husband, then she is more able to, in turn, meet his needs and give him what he needs out of the relationship. And when she doesn't feel this way, or doesn't feel this way because of him, she is in no mood to be thinking about caring for his needs and doing what he needs out of the relationship. There's a story. Oh, and by the way, men have just, for whatever reason, just can't quite figure this out. Like, it's a mystery to them. So there's a story, for example, of this couple that goes into the dentist office. And the husband makes it really clear on the front end that he's in a hurry. And he's like, Doc, listen, man, just get in there, pull the tooth, no Novocaine, no needles, nothing. Just get it out of there. The doc says, man, I wish everybody was as hardcore as you. Which tooth is it? And he says, honey, show him your tooth. And so this is how we men do things. Like, you know, much of the time we're pushing forward because that's who we are. Like we hunt, we gather, we make fire. We're the top sales person. We're the top producer. You know, we're task-oriented, and we go out and we conquer things. And while we're conquering and doing all those things that bring value to us, we sometimes forget about our family. We forget about what's going on at home. We forget to be sensitive to our wives and their needs. We forget to make our wives feel special. We forget to spend time with them and do the little things that communicate to them that we really care. And then we come home to a scowling face and an unresponsive heart, and we wonder what in the world happened to her. You know, why is she behaving this way? Why is she acting like this toward me? She's so cold and so distant and snippy. I don't understand it. I'm very frustrated, and I need her to behave a different way. And so then I throw out the bomb. I use the Bible. And I say, wives are supposed to submit to their husbands. That's what we do, right? Or I've heard of men that's stupid enough to say that. Because I've never said that, by the way. At least that I can recall. Maybe I have amnesia because I want to forget the experience, but I don't think I've ever said that. And any man who's ever said that can testify what a stupid thing that is and how effective that is to say. Man, when's the last time you really went out of your way to make your wife feel special? To make her feel like she was the most important person in the world to you. Some men say, well, you know, I bring home the bacon and that ought to be enough for her. Well, if that's your attitude, all it does is reveal about how ignorant you are regarding your wife, her needs, and what it means to be a Christian husband. Your wife needs you to love her and to cherish her and make her feel like she's the most important person in your life, your best friend, your helpmate, and that you want her in your life. You want to spend time with her. You want to connect with her on every level, and you do that, and that will trigger emotions in her that will empower her to, in turn, meet the needs that you have in the relationship. And the men are like, okay, when are we going to get to that part? You know, we've been talking about the wife. You know, what about the husband? What about, you know, what husbands desire in the relationship? And again, psychologists and therapists and so on and so forth have discovered, it seems, that what most men generally desire in the relationship is respect from their wives. Just so happens to be what Paul wrote 2,000 years ago. And so, wives, your husband wants to know that you respect him. He wants to know that you appreciate how hard he works. He wants you to know the sacrifices that he makes for the family. He wants you to trust him and his ideas and his opinions. He wants you to believe in him. He wants you to depend on him, and he wants you to make a genuine effort to communicate that you feel this way. And this is why husbands desire wives to take their side. And women don't understand this because women aren't this way. You know, they're like, why does, you know, he need me to take his side? Why does he want me to affirm his ideas and his opinions and even brag on him? Now, I'll give you another instance, and again, I promised Cindy I wasn't going to say stuff about her, but you know, my wife, Cindy, is very stingy with direct praise, right? Like, it almost never happens. But then sometimes, like I'm walking by and she's talking on the phone with her friends or something like that, and I'm not eavesdropping, I'm just walking by. You know, when your name is brought up, you just kind of, whoa, what's that, And so I'll stop, and she doesn't even know I'm listening. And again, I'm not really eavesdropping, but I'll hear her say stuff like, well, Gary did this. Or Gary, thinks that. Or Gary wants to do this. And the way that she says it makes me feel like 10 feet tall. So I'm just sitting over there by myself like, yeah, that's really awesome. Ladies, you have no idea what it does for your husband's self-esteem when he knows that you believe in him. Like, your husband wants respect. That's what men want. Men want respect. They want respect at work. They want to be respected in their circle of friends, and they want respect in the home. And this is why men just shrink when their wives, criticize them or nag them or put them down, especially in public. And a lot of women, again, they don't get this because they're not that way. They're like, if someone was nagging me and doing that, and I didn't want to do it, I'd just tell them to shut up, And if it was something I needed to be doing, I'd do it. And if it's something I didn't need to be doing, I would just tell them, because that's the way women are. But that's not how men are wired, or at least that's not how they receive those things. And a lot of women haven't figured out why nagging doesn't work, and why criticizing, their husband seems to have the exact opposite effect of what it is that they desire it to have. And yes, they can get their husband to do whatever task they're nagging him to do, but emotionally, he is a million miles away. And he is in no frame of mind to now make you feel special and valued and appreciated. There's a story about a guy who died and went to heaven, and he gets up there to the pearly gates, and he saw that there's two lines for men. And in one line, the men, they go back as far as the eye can see, thousands upon thousands of men, way back, forever. And then in the other line, there's like 3 guys standing there. So he goes up to the short line, and he asks the guy in the back of the line, he says, hey, what's up with the 2 lines? And the guy says, oh, that line over there is for all the men who are henpecked by their wives, and this line is for all the men who are not. And so the first guy congratulates the second guy. He says, man, you must be quite a man to be able to stand here over in this line. Congratulations, that's really something. And then the guy just kind of sheepishly says, well, no, not really. My wife told me to stand here. And a lot of women want their men to be more assertive, more rugged, more manly. And they try to nag them into it, causing them to lose more respect for them in the process. Women, you want to know what your husband hears every time you nag him? Doesn't matter what words you're saying. Every single time. You're not the man you should be. Nag, nag, nag. You're not the man you should be. Nag, nag, nag. You're not the man that you should be. And if we want men, or we want our husbands to be the man that we want them to be, we should do exactly the opposite. He needs to see you bragging about him to his friends. He needs to see you trusting his decisions and believing in him. He needs to see you honoring his downtime. He needs to see you doing all those little things that that support the things that he's interested in. And you don't have to cook him a 5-course meal every night or go crazy in the bedroom or constantly praise him. However, doing some of those things, some of the time or things like them, communicate respect to your husband, and then that empowers him to be in the frame of mind and and be in the right place in the relationship to be able to minister to you and meet your needs in the relationship. And then, a lot of wives, they hear that and they say, well, you know what? I'll start serving him when he starts serving me. And the husband says, well, that's a joke because I'm like Rodney Dangerfield in my house. I get absolutely no respect. And what this reveals, this attitude, is that we're completely losing focus of the spirit of the passage at hand, and it becomes all about me. Our service is now contingent upon our expectations and all the things that we expect our partner to be doing for us. But guess what? Our partner is human. Our partner is fallible. Our partner is flawed. They cannot perfectly satisfy all our needs and fulfill us in all the ways that we expect. Only God can satisfy and fulfill us in all the ways that we expect. And so what happens is we'll look over there and we'll say, well, my partner's not doing everything that he or she, needs to be doing in my life, and I'm not satisfied with that, and so I'm just going to pull back a little bit. And then I see my partner pulling back a little bit, and I say, man, look at them. They're not even trying. I'm going to pull back a little bit. And then they say, look at him doing that. I'm going to pull back a little bit. And then before you know it, everybody's defensive. There are lines in the sand, and everybody's feeling unloved and unappreciated. This passage has kind of a spiraling effect, or the principles in this passage. When you make your relationship all about you, or all about me. It's all about my rights, my needs, my desires. And if that's the way both parties are in the relationship, I guarantee you that's a relationship that's going to spiral down. It's inevitable because that feeds on itself. But if both people in the relationship are genuinely trying to serve the other, to submit to the other in love and humility and sacrifice, and they're genuinely trying to meet one another's needs, that's a relationship that's going to spiral up every single time. Can't do it. In fact, I challenge you. Think about this. Ask yourself this question. If you're married, what would my relationship with my spouse be like if I did everything I could to live up to the spirit of this passage? That if you're a guy, you're a husband, what if I did everything I could, or the man in the relationship did everything he could to love and honor and cherish his wife and make her feel like she was the most special and important person in the world, to connect with her on every level, and just let her know how much he appreciates her. And then the wife in the relationship did everything she could to love and honor her husband and to let her know that she believes in him, that she trusts him, that she respects him, that she thinks he's the greatest guy in the world, that she thinks he's an absolute stud, and she's doing everything she can to communicate that, and both the husband and the wife are doing that. What is going to happen to your relationship? I guarantee you that it will go to heights that you never before thought possible. Because that type of service, that type of sacrifice, that type of humility, that type of love, that type of submission, submit to one another, it feeds on itself. And it's dynamic. And you're feeling fulfilled and you're feeling satisfied, and you know it's because God has put this person in your life. And now that person is doing that towards you, and you have these feelings you have to express back towards them, and it just cycles up, and it's awesome. And that's what happens when the Christian ethic, when the Christian values of humility and service and love are expressed in the home and modeled in the husband and wife relationship and modeled in the marriage relationship. And so this is not a passage. This is what I mean when I say that we misapply this passage. There's a bunch of yahoos out there, well, this passage says that, I'm the boss. That's the opposite of what the passage is saying. It's like literally the opposite. It's not about who's the boss or who's in charge or who's in control. It's about mutual submission and mutual service and sharing humility and service and love with one another so that we can model authentic spirituality in our home and in our relationship to lead us towards incredible, satisfying, and fulfilling relationships that honor God and honor Christ and give us an incredible sense of blessing and fullness in our lives that we get from and is provided by the incredible spouse that God has given to us. And so if you're here today and you're like, well, I'm not really sure my marriage looks like that. I challenge you to be the first one to serve, the first one to submit, the first one to swallow your pride and kind of deny yourself and say, you know what, I'm going to go out of my way and I'm going to communicate love or respect or whatever it is, and I'm going to really work at that. And you start doing that and you begin serving your spouse, I guarantee you that God is going to use that, and He's going to begin doing some special things in your marriage. And it may take a little while. God works in mysterious ways sometimes. Maybe it can lead to a discussion in your marriage about the kind of marriage that you want to have and really what that means. But as you begin to take this attitude of a servant, if you're a woman, serve your husband. If you're a man, serve your wife. And as you serve them and make them feel loved and special and appreciated and honored, then God is going to do incredible things in your home and in your family and in your relationship.